following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hello and welcome to Perspectives. My name is David Schoneman and I'm your host on this program. On Perspectives, we take a look at what's happening locally primarily. We want to look at what's happening locally so that when we have an election, which we do this year coming up, we are informed as voters about how our tax dollars are being spent and about what's going on with our government. Well, today is March 10th, and maybe you've gotten your vaccination for COVID, maybe not, but this is the news these days. Everyone is getting vaccinated. And that can be a good thing for some and maybe not for others. But what we have discovered is that there is a new normal that's being developed. We've talked about this for some time. What is the new normal going to look like? One of the new normal things that we're seeing is that folks at home all across the country are paying more attention to what's going on in their governments, locally, on the state level, and certainly on the federal level too. And that's happening here in Nashua as well. And one of the areas that is getting a lot of scrutiny is public education. Kids have been home for many months in many cases, not getting in-person education, whereas private schools and charter schools, which is also public education, have been having in-person classes in many areas. That's what's happened here. So the school board, the visibility of the school board has been elevated because of COVID, and that, I think, is part of the new normal. I think that's a good thing. With me today to talk about the school board in Nashua is Alicia Houston. Alicia's been on the show before. We've talked about the need to reopen the schools, get kids back in the classroom, and we have some more issues we're going to touch on today. So thanks for tuning in. Alicia, hi. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me, David. It's good to see you again.
Well, thanks. Glad to have you here.
Yeah.
So last time we were here, we talked about reopening the schools, and we're hearing that there's a slight reopening of public schools. It's a hybrid program. Mm-hmm. It's better than nothing, a couple days a week. Mm-hmm. How is it going as far as you know?
So my understanding, you're correct. It's two cohorts. They attend school. Cohort A goes Monday, Tuesday, and then B is Wednesday, Thursday. It is only half days though, and Fridays are still additional help or office hours for the educators. So we're still really only looking at 2 half days for each student. And then the other 2 days where they are not in person, they're remote. Now, we still have children that have had to stay remote. My son is one of those students because of all of the inconsistencies, and there's no solid foundational plan on getting them back to school in a full-time capacity. So because of all the uncertainty and with his diagnoses, I would be very hard pressed to have him go back to school. Meanwhile, my 15-and-a-half-year-old gets up at 5:30 in the morning and he is ready to get on the bus. And I'm pretty sure I've never seen that before. And I know a lot of parents are seeing that too. So you're right. It is slow progress is still progress. But
there's a ways to go yet.
Yeah, but we have a long way to go before we get these kids back because we also need to worry about getting them caught up because as of right now, Nashua was out of school. I mean, I think next week makes a year.
Yeah.
And they only just went back about 2 weeks ago. So they're a year behind their peers. And you know, the Nashua School District is on the hook for getting these kids caught back up.
And you've been working with them for a while. You and some friends of yours, concerned parents, you're a concerned citizen here in the city. We're delighted to have you here for that reason in particular. And you've been looking at the Board of Education, and you're dealing with the Board of Education, dealing with the union, and the assumption has always been that we're kind of all at arm's length. There's the parents, there's the Board of Ed, which is responsible to the taxpayers and to the parents, and there's the union. They're looking out for the teachers and ostensibly for the students as well. But you've discovered in doing some research that it's not quite as arm's length as you might have thought.
Yeah.
What have you found?
So first things first, before COVID-19 was just like everybody else that you talked about at the beginning. I did not, I mean, I kind of lived in my own bubble, and, of course I voted for the president and, the federal level, but I was also one of those people who was very highly unaware. I would vote and I would say, okay, well, this is my party and I think I remember this name, and I would just vote for those people. So what I found is that during COVID, we have all had nothing but time to look at things. And we have had nothing but time while we're fighting for our kids to make sure that, the kids that need to be home can stay home. People in immune compromised households, that has to be an option for them. We don't want anybody to be unsafe. Same goes for teachers. However, there is a population of students that learn best in school, that their learning style really needs to be catered to an in-person model. And then there's teachers that want to go back too. And we've seen that the whole time. But what was really interesting is that we've seen the common trend in a lot of districts, not just Nashua, but, Los Angeles has cases like this. Pennsylvania has another case like this. They're all over the news, where it's assumed or there's some kind of like underlying ideology that the teachers unions have been working with the Board of Ed. Now, as somebody who is completely politically, like I'm in my infancy stages and having my eyes opened much, much more. The most intriguing thing that I found was that a lot of people were like, no, that wouldn't happen. It is.
They're working closely together.
Oh, David, they are.
Yes.
And it's absolutely concerning to the level that they are. Is it legal in some cases? Sure. There's a lot of things that are illegal, but you still probably shouldn't do it.
Right.
So one of the things, and what I'm referencing there, David, is so I was able to find campaign contribution information. It's all available. It's available on the public Nashua website, nashua.gov.
Go Nashua.
Go Nashua. So I apologize. But if you look at that information for the elected officials, now I only looked at it for Board of Education because that has kind of been, that's something that I've really taken under my wing, and I've taken it very seriously because there's a lot of things that can use improvement in Nashua when it comes to education. But when I was looking at these, there was one common theme of sponsorship. Do you want to know what that common theme is, David? The Nashua Teachers Union.
Nashua Teachers Union is sponsoring or making campaign contributions to elected members of the Board of Education.
So they're not making contributions to elected officials. This starts before that. So they are sponsoring candidates through their campaign process. Now, again, is that illegal? No, there's nothing illegal about that. But how can you, as a parent, look at yourself? And this is what myself and many other parents and taxpayers are. Again, we've been home for a year. We didn't really have a whole heck of a lot to do. So now we're paying attention, eyes wide open. And we're like, wait a minute. If you received campaign contribution money, and this isn't a couple dollars, this is, between $500 to $750.
It's a lot of dough.
It's a lot of money, especially for a local level campaign. So you have accepted as a candidate this money, and it comes from the teachers union. So I guess the question a lot of parents have is, no, it's not illegal, but is it ethical?
It doesn't sound like it's ethical to me. And clearly the teachers union doesn't go around bragging about this.
No.
The candidates don't go around bragging about it. They file that paperwork because they have to, and it's available, but it's generally not widely circulated. And I think you're discovering it's not widely known.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people do know about this. This is nothing new. Board of Education candidates are largely funded, are often certainly get contributions. Not everyone, but many of them from teachers union, and so do Board of Aldermen members. I was on the Board of Aldermen for a few years, and I know that some of my colleagues at that time were certainly taking money from the teachers union. What I always found interesting, because we were focused on finance, Board of Education is focused on education things, Board of Aldermen is focused on finance. It would come time to vote on a teacher's contract, and the aldermen who I knew were getting money from the teachers union would say things like, this is a very tough situation, but sometimes we just have to make the difficult decision. And he was saying that to justify voting for the teacher's contract, which was going to raise taxes. But that wasn't the difficult decision for him. That was the easy decision for him.
Yes.
The difficult decision for him would have been to say no to those teachers that gave him money when it was time to vote on a contract, and he was unwilling to do that. So without fail, he and many others, every time this occurred, would vote for the contract. And it didn't matter that taxpayers stood up and said, this is not fair. It wouldn't matter that taxpayers said enrollment is down. It wouldn't matter that taxpayers said private schools and charter schools, the cost is half of what it is in our public schools. They didn't care about that. What they cared about was making sure that next round, they would still get the same campaign contribution. And so that's quid pro quo.
Yeah.
The union says, we give you this money, we sponsor your candidacy, do the right thing, which means do the right thing for us. And that happens all the time.
So it actually goes, and you're right, and again, I'm totally new to all of this, and I'm soaking it all in because I think that it's absolutely ludicrous that, as a parent, how did I miss this? As a taxpayer, how did I miss this?
Well, they don't advertise it.
Yeah, where was I though? So I think that for me, I did notice the same things with the Board of Education. And let's be honest, Board of Aldermen, Board of Education, it all comes down to the almighty dollar.
Right.
So the question that's been circulating now is, okay, well, if they accepted money from a teachers union to sponsor their campaign, and their elected position is to act in the best interest of the children in a situation like a pandemic, how do you do that? You're sponsored by a teachers union, and you have to advocate for the children. That's your elected position. And now we've seen, the students want to go back to school. And they need to be in person. We're not going to meet instructional hours. They're missing time. They're falling behind their peers. But on this side, as much as I resonate and understand with the concern because we are in a pandemic, it just begs the question, how often has this happened where you've had to choose between one or the other and you've chosen the latter? And it even goes so far, David, as there was a Board of Education meeting on Monday, which would have been March 8th. March 8th. And during that meeting, one of our board members states during the meeting, and you can watch it, it's available on YouTube, that she had accepted union money previously for her campaign. And she lost campaign money one time because she didn't agree to the terms of the sponsorship, which included voting. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't see how that could be ethical. I don't see how somebody could do that. And it's 6 of our board members in Nashua.
6 of 9.
Of 9.
Right.
That isn't
That's a supermajority.
It is.
Yeah. Supermajority is funded by the teachers union.
Yes. And I understand the teachers having a union to protect them, and that's wonderful. And I think that it's great. I'm not anti-union or pro-union. I'm pro, let's do what's best for the kids and the individuals who are in the elected positions that handle that. They need to have that as their primary focus. Right. Otherwise, what position did you run for?
Well, that's the good question. I think they ran to be involved, potentially. They ran for the attention, because along with that money comes attention from the union. And I think that people can warm up to that. A recipient of that, a board member might say, you know what, these guys are being pretty nice to me. I'm feeling pretty important. I think I'll do what they want. And that's what happens. And so I wouldn't be surprised if there are phone calls prior to a meeting or a vote. What does the union feel about this? Is the union going to support this? If I do this, is the union going to support me? And then, they end up doing what the union wants.
I agree. And that has to stop.
Yeah.
That has to stop. So during COVID, we're all paying attention. We're all noticing these things. Parents are talking, and we're saying, "Wait a minute, did you just hear that? Did I hear that right? Let's clarify." And then you clarify with 10 people, and you come to the unanimous decision that yes, you heard it right. Yes, this is happening.
Right.
Yes, people are aware of that. And no, we as parents and taxpayers, absolutely not.
Yeah.
So I think that what's happening now is that local elections are becoming much more important. And people are paying attention, and not just the people that historically have voted for, one side or the other. Even in the Board of Education meetings, it's paneled as nonpartisan, but at some point, that it does weigh in which party you run on.
Sure.
And you look at everything and how it's all intertwined. Things like the Nashua Teachers Union sending out email flyers with the candidates that they've sponsored that have met their criteria.
Right.
Those are the only candidates getting in. And I have to tell you that although there's 6 people that received campaign contributions, there is one standout who has been able to walk that line. And I truly and wholeheartedly appreciate her ability to do that, because that's how, if you are going to accept it, it should be done every time. Jessica Brown has been a fantastic candidate. She has advocated for the children. There hasn't been any bias votes from what we can see as parents. Again, from our perspectives. But we also see that instead of looking at it as a positive or a negative, this is a really great opportunity for Nashua. It's an amazing opportunity for growth and improvement. And we've had a year to really sit down and think about it. And what we really have decided, and I'm not speaking on behalf of everyone, we recently started a new group, Nashua Residents for Responsible Government, because this stems outside of the educational system as well.
It does.
And they all come down to the same thing, and it is, how are we spending our money? What is our money being spent on? And what can we do to try to budget more effectively? You take your household, for instance. If I were going to have a certain amount of money and I needed to buy groceries and I needed to buy household things, but I also needed to pay for gas, I'm surely not going to buy a new big screen TV and then say, well, I don't know where the money went, but I bought this new TV. It's kind of the same ideology, and now you've got a bunch of parents who are used to, rubbing pennies together when things get tough to make sure we can take care of our kids. And individuals, we've all had to do that. And this year has been us pinching pennies and rubbing them together because everything has changed so dramatically. And with the upcoming elections, we have 4 Board of Education seats that are open. That is not ward specific. So we need some really, really strong candidates to run that will run in the best interest of the children, whether they, are accepting campaign contributions. Again, it's not illegal, but we have to look at it at face value. What is going to be best for our children?
Right.
And if it borders on unethical, we probably want to take another look at it. It's, Santa Claus. You check the list once and then you check it again.
Right.
So it's that same ideology with the Board of Education. And like you said, with the Board of Aldermen, that's also tied in too. All things that I didn't know before, because now I'm paying attention.
Yep. And there's a Board of Public Works.
At the Board of Public Works, the mayor, everyone is involved in, and it all ties together. And I think that's what people are starting to piecemeal is that, yes, the Board of Education may have been doing things differently, but right now it's not working. So we need to get these kids back in school, and we still need to have that option to keep, the teachers and the children with immune compromised systems while we figure out the vaccinations. But there are people and children who are not going to get the vaccination.
Sure.
They're not. And that is a decision that those families and individuals are allowed to make. And then you look at the Board of Aldermen. So the Board of Education is about education, but who finances that?
That comes from the Board of Aldermen, and it comes from taxpayers.
Yes, so the taxpayers pay them this money. You have the Board of Ed asking, we need this much money. And then the Board of Aldermen is saying, okay, we'll give you that much money. And And it goes around and around and around.
Because they're all funded by that teachers union.
And that's so difficult.
It's very, very difficult.
It's very difficult.
The mayor has spoken about how much the taxes are going to go up this year. He said at 5 to 7%.
Yes.
And that's a huge, huge change.
Well, and if you think about the things that have been cited, I know that Mayor Donches, who is a wonderful man, I've met him personally, he has advised that it has a lot to do with education. I know
that's half the budget.
I know that in the article, it was a recent article in the Union Leader, he referenced a significant loss of about 800 students. I did have the opportunity to correct that number. It's actually 860 students as of October that we have lost. So that is how much our enrollment had gone down as of October, which is the state, that is the number that they send to the state of New Hampshire for funding. However, we've lost more students than that. And it wasn't just preschool and kindergarten students. Yeah. As of October, we had 135-ish, at or about, pre-kindergarten, preschool. And we now have, as of February 21st, we have none. We have no preschool students.
Wow.
So again, he's referencing these issues with the education system. But I know for a fact that many parents reached out to him. I've had Zoom meetings with him in other groups in the past. And we've pleaded and begged, the education system is going to suffer because parents are going to pull their kids out of school, which is going to hurt the city budget. And because they weren't in school, a lot of those free or reduced hot lunch applications get sent out 5, 6, 7 times before a family will return it. We're 40% poverty in Nashua, and that was before the pandemic. So imagine 40% poverty. We have an amazing, diverse community, and that's so wonderful. However, a lot of people don't understand. People that come from third world countries that are here and trying to live the American dream, and their children and our children and everyone's children are the future of America. So if they don't know, coming from a place where they had no rights, you just did as you said, or did as you were told, and that was it. For them to come to this world and this country at this time and say, well, they told us that we have to do that, and that's okay, because they never had the opportunity to have rights, and now they do. So that's what is happening. It's almost like a great awakening, and it's so amazing, David, to be a part of, where you have, young Republicans like myself who are, I'm also fiscally conservative and socially liberal. So I can see it from both different sides. My perspective is on either side of the fence. But what we're learning to do is walk in that gray area and say, how do we, because our country and everything is so broken right now. It's all broken. And instead of sitting there saying, well, this is broken and it's really broken, and oh boy, is it so broken, collectively, we're all down in the dirt, and there's only one way to go from here, and it's up.
And I think what you cited earlier, too, about how people are getting involved in local politics and understanding the importance of it. The decisions that are made in City Hall have a much greater effect on our day-to-day life than the decisions made in Washington.
Yes.
Really. Decisions made in Washington, affect the military and affect foreign aid and affect, all these big things. But on a day-to-day basis, what happens in City Hall here in Nashua has a greater effect on us. That's the tax rate we're talking about, 5 to 7% increase. With the school budget that makes up half of that, it's a huge number. And meanwhile, we're losing all these students. So why is this money continuing to be spent? That's another question, too. You got to take a look at that.
Yes.
Who's paying for whom? Because with 800 fewer students, some of our elementary schools have less than that number of students enrolled in a good year.
Yes.
Maybe some of them have half of that. Maybe some might have 400 students enrolled.
Well, there's at or about 11,000 students overall. We've lost about 860, so we're closer to that 10,000 student mark. And you bring up really great points. Where's our money going?
Well, where is the money going? And if we've lost enough students, now I know they're not all from one school.
No,
but if we've lost enough students that could equal the entire population of 2 of our elementary schools, why are we not consolidating somehow? Why is our education budget yet again this year, expanding when enrollment is not down. Traditionally, it's been down like by 50 to 100, I think, per year. Now it's down 800 per year. Why is the school budget still growing? Well, we need to look at who's voting on that budget and why they're doing it.
Exactly. So I think that's the most key piece is, and I would encourage, I don't know which camera I would need to be looking at, sorry.
We just talk.
So the most important thing is encouraging and educating everyone. I was astounded, David, by the amount of people during the Board of Education meeting that were in the Nashua Residents for Responsible Government Facebook group. It's new. If you would like, absolutely join it. We're happy to have more Nashua residents.
I'm going to sign up for that one.
Yeah,
That
we're
sounds
doing
great.
the nonpartisan approach. But when you look at the core of everything, we need to fix it. And it starts with selecting really great candidates.
Yes.
And it starts with people that are able to look and think creatively, because you're right, we're spending a lot more money than we should. And we need people to stop doing that.
We need to improve our spending patterns.
I agree.
And we need to have folks on the Board of Education in particular who are really deciding things based on what students need, not based on what the union president says the teachers need.
Well, I'm hoping that we have some really great Board of Education
Now we have
candidates.
We have
coming up.
nine people on the board.
So
how many are up for election this year?
Yep. So for Board of Education, we have a total of 9. 4 are up for re-election right now. Again,
That's a 4-year term?
no, I believe it's 2 years.
Okay.
2-year terms. So we have 4.
Actually, I think it's a 4-year term. That's why it's not all 9 in 1 year.
It might be.
Okay.
I think it trickles. Possibly.
Yeah, it rolls over.
Yeah.
But it rolls over because we have
Irregardless.
elections every 2 years.
Yes. So 4 or 2. So we have 4 for Board of Education. We have 9 for Board of Aldermen, and that is by ward.
That's the ward alderman.
That's the
9
ward
of them
aldermen. And
up
then we
for
have
re-election.
3 at large.
3 of the 6.
Yep. And then we have 1 Public Works.
No, 2 for
2
public works.
Yep, you're correct. So there's a lot of really great opportunity here.
There are a lot of great
and we
opportunities.
need people, like we just need people. So if you're thinking about running, please run for office. We need you.
I would say, from my own experience too, it's a great experience. I think to step up and serve the public in that way is really a great experience. Alicia, we're out of time here. We got 9 seconds left. I want to thank you again for coming in. It's great to hear from you. Glad to hear that things are improving in the schools, and I'm glad to hear that folks at home are paying attention to what's really been going on for quite a long time. There are some conflicts of interest that occur on some of these votes because people are enjoying campaign contributions and then making a decision on our money, and they're deciding, do they stand up for taxpayers or they stand up for those folks who've been giving them money? And it's a hard choice. They shouldn't put themselves in that position by taking the money in the first place, I would suggest. But thank you for coming in. Thanks for bringing that to light. I hope people at home are paying attention.
Thank you, David.
And I want to thank you at home, too, for tuning in. Glad to have you here. My name is David Schoneman. You've been watching Perspectives, and we'll see you next time.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.